Hi, I hope you are well. This podcast is a place for people to share personal and professional perspectives, talk openly, and ask questions. From serious to silly to sublime, it's all about communication and connection. Always coming from a place of kindness and curiosity, we talk about shared humanity, discuss ideas, and highlight people creating a better world. We've got to keep learning, keep growing, keep being. I'm Melissa Beek, and this is Beek on Being. Today's episode is Beek on Being Financially Literate. A lot of people are overwhelmed when it comes to discussing finances. It can be confusing or hard to figure out where to begin or what works for you at different stages of your life. Today, we have Managing Director of Bermont Gold Wealth Advisory of Raymond James, Bill Bermont, to discuss practical financial advice for every age. I'm so thrilled you're here.
I'm thrilled to be here. This is my maiden voyage on a podcast. So
I love it.
I'm really happy that you're my Sherpa for it.
I love it. I'm your Sherpa for the day. That's perfect. Well, I know and love you for a long time, but I want our listeners to know a little bit about you. So will you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got into the field that you're in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I grew up in Miami with your family,
Yay.
and then went to Duke University, where I got to see good basketball and met my lovely wife, Lynn, who is a French teacher. And then I went to Chicago, worked in banking, went to Northwestern for business school. And then for about 20 years, I was on a trading desk, first at Salomon Brothers, Citigroup, and then at Credit Suisse. And about 3 years ago, I decided to spend more time in Miami working with my father at Raymond James. And my father, Peter, and I, along with Michael Gold, our third partner, we manage about $5 billion in assets, stocks and bonds and alternatives, and planning for wealthy families. And we do some work for endowments and institutions as well. And I am very passionate about financial literacy. If I didn't go into finance, I probably would have been a teacher. So this is a wonderful opportunity to do that.
To combine everything.
Absolutely.
So how did you get into the financial field?
How did I get into the financial field? I went to college thinking I was going to be a teacher. So I was a history major. Then the summer between my junior and senior year, I had an internship experience with one of my father's close friends in New York City. And I really enjoyed it. And it was a great experience with a mentor who wasn't my father. And then from there, I realized I wanted to try out banking and I wanted to go to business school. And I just got really fascinated by business and the market. And that seed had kind of always been there for a while, but I got on the finance track and have kind of kept going. And what I really like about I'm doing now is I was on a trading desk for 20 years, as I said, and now I'm doing financial advisory work for friends and families. And what I would say is I've gone from haggling to helping. It's been a much more, I enjoy the trading floor very much, but the last 3 years have been a little bit more wholesome.
I love that. Wholesome.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
That's good. Okay. So for our listeners, so they can get basic concepts in layman's terms.
Okay.
Will you please define some of those terms like stocks, bonds, money market?
Okay.
Okay.
So it's all about money.
Okay.
All about the Benjamins. So
Okay.
when people think about investing, it is generally the stock market.
Okay.
So if you buy a stock or stocks, shares in a company, you are basically becoming an owner of that company.
Right.
And so big corporations, Microsoft, Apple, Coca-Cola. And so as an owner of that company, you're hoping the company performs well. And if you bought the stock for $1, you hope that becomes $2, $3 in the future.
Right.
So when you're thinking about stocks, you're thinking about kind of the upside that can come from that. With bonds, also known as fixed income, when you're investing in a bond, what you want to get is a fair rate of return and then all your money back in the end. So there's all kinds of bonds.
Right.
There's government bonds, also known as treasuries, and that's backed by the security of, for our country, the U.S. government. There's also emerging markets bonds, it's Latin America or other developing countries. And the reason why they call it fixed income is you get your coupon payment or your interest payment a couple times a year.
Right.
And then in the end, you get your money back. And so that's why it's called fixed income. And so the difference between stocks and bonds, in stocks, you're thinking about growth and upside.
Right.
In bonds, you're thinking about just getting your money paid back, again, with a fair rate of return.
Right.
And there's all sorts of variations on that, but a lot of investing, it happens in those two areas.
Okay. So can you define for our listeners also like money market funds and
Sure. Okay. So
mutual funds?
absolutely. Okay. So in investing, there's this notion of risk and return. The more risk you're taking as an investor, the more return you should get. As a general matter, stocks are riskier than bonds for all the reasons I just described. The safest asset that you can have is cash, physical cash in your hand, or in some cases under your mattress.
Right. But that doesn't grow.
But that doesn't grow. And so there are ways to invest that cash and have ready access to it. You could put it into a bank in a savings account, maybe get a little bit of, small interest, like less than 1%, a couple basis points. Or you can put it in a money market fund, which was going to yield a little bit more, but you can't go into the bank and withdraw that today. You'd have to wait a day or two for that.
Right.
Because inherent in risk is this notion of liquidity. The more liquid an asset is, the safer it is. Right. And liquidity just means there's nothing more liquid than $1 in your pocket or gold.
Accessibility to it immediately.
Exactly. Exactly. And so money markets, bank saving accounts, those are the safest and most liquid. But because you're not earning a huge return on that, there's an opportunity cost to not investing in something that, while still safe, could be riskier, like a bond or a stock.
A stock.
Right.
Okay. Right. Got it. So we talk about everybody should be investing. Right. And why is it important to invest, and why is it important to invest earlier?
Okay. Backing up for 1 second, there's probably some other terms you want me to define.
Yes, go ahead.
So you can buy an individual stock, you can buy an individual bond. There's also bundles of stocks and bonds that you can buy, and those would come in the form of mutual funds, where a money manager like a Fidelity or a PIMCO, Pacific Income Management, they will manage a portfolio of stocks around a certain
Hundreds
theme.
Of...
Yes. And so you're getting a benefit of diversification, which we'll get back to. You can also do the same thing with bonds. There's also something that out there called ETFs, exchange traded funds, which are like mutual funds, but they're not being actively managed by a real person in an office in New York or Boston or wherever. They're just constructed, again, could be a place like Fidelity or Vanguard or PIMCO, and they're organized around a theme, like the S&P 500 index fund, or those 500 stocks in equal weighting. And these are diversified and liquid forms of investing that get you access to a certain kind of market or a certain kind of theme you're investing in.
Right.
So
it could be environmental. It could be.
Yes, absolutely. There could be all sorts of themes. You could have large cap stocks. You could have small cap. You could have biotech. There is no lack of categories that you can invest in across these different products.
And can you tell, you said small cap and large cap. For our listeners.
Okay, got it. So there's when you're investing in companies that are publicly listed, because there's a difference between public and private. And we'll come back to private because we can talk a little bit later about alternatives too.
Got it.
Because that's where
I'm writing all these. I want you to come back to diversification and alternatives. I'm writing my notes.
So, because alternatives is where you start to get into what's been very topical of late, notions of private equity or private credit, which are timely, given the news cycle of late. So
small cap, large cap.
Yeah. So when a company is public, it has, if a company has 100 shares and is trading at $10 a share, that company's market cap is $1,000. So that's your number of shares times your share price. The largest companies are considered large cap. Microsoft is a large cap company. Then there's mid cap companies, which are somewhere between, closer to like a $10 billion sort of enterprise value. Because now you have $1 trillion kind of valuations.
Numbers you can't even imagine.
Numbers you can't even imagine. Let's try to get your head around $1 trillion. And then you have smaller cap, which are just smaller companies that are still public, and you can buy their shares, but they're not as big, and they're probably not going to trade as much. And so there's risk inherent in the size as well too of these types of companies. So a larger company is generally going to be a safer investment than a smaller, potentially more speculative kind of company. And again, that goes back to risk and return.
Okay. Why is it important to invest early?
Why is it important to invest early? So,
like when you're younger.
I think a lot of times you don't think about investing until it's time to be an adult. And so a lot of people will have their first job in college, after college, and they start to get their paycheck. They start paying taxes. They start paying rent. And when you're young in your career, in your life, you are trying to establish yourself, and you're probably burning more cash than you're having cash flow come in. But it's really important that you create the discipline early in your life, early in your career, to start putting money away, to start saving, to start
As
having
simple
that
as
discipline.
$20 a week, or like
Anything that
anything
you can, anything that you can spare,
right,
without having to, eat tuna fish every night,
right,
potentially.
right. You still have a life, but be able to like stash it away.
That's right. And then also you get into the discipline of making good decisions.
Right.
And it's really important to have that discipline, because we'll talk about compounding,
Right.
compounding interest, or just compounding of your money over time.
Right.
If you start investing very early, that money will grow. It'll compound upon itself
Right.
over time, until it becomes a very large sum, when you start to need it more for getting married,
Right.
having a family, sending kids to college, and then ultimately retiring and having a wonderful life
Right.
with your partner.
Right. I think a lot of 20-year-olds are out there thinking, oh, I don't even know where to begin.
Okay.
So how do they create a portfolio? Like, how do they start? Is this something that they need to, can they do it online? Do they need to go into a brokerage firm?
Okay. So let's back up.
Okay.
You've got stocks and bonds and cash. Those are sort of the forms of currency for investing. We can set aside cash for now.
Okay.
Stocks, generally more risky, more upside potential. Again, risk and return. And there's this notion out there that comes from the University of Chicago, where I did not go to school,
Right.
Called efficient markets, saying that if there's an investment that's returning too much relative to its risk, enough people will buy it and it will become a fair risk return. If an investment is trading at too little return for its risk, people will sell it and then it'll be repriced according to its risk. So again, risk and return are really important. And so when you think about stocks and bonds, early in your life, as a general rule, I would say you should be mostly invested in stocks, because you want to start to get that growth.
When you're younger.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then over time, you get more into fixed income, because that's just how your life is.
Right.
And so a rule of thumb,
More security with job.
a rule of thumb for a lot of people is that early on, I probably want to be 90% in stocks, 10% in bonds,
Okay.
or maybe 100% in stocks. As you get a little older, call it like late 20s, early 30s, maybe 80-20 stocks and bonds.
Got it.
And sort of the fat part of the age curve, if you will. Generally, the rule of thumb is 70-30 or 60-40 stocks and bonds, respectively.
Got
Yes.
it. Okay.
Yes.
So can someone do this online?
There's a lot of information to be had online.
Okay.
There's a lot that you can teach yourself.
Okay.
I think it's important to, if you're going to do it yourself, at least get some advice. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself, hire someone to give you that advice.
At least give you the foundation.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Got it. All right.
Absolutely.
So how do you start investing when you're young and you don't have as much knowledge, you're not as experienced, you don't really have a lot of money yet, but you want to build financial security? I know the Einstein of Wall Street. I don't know if you watch him ever. Do you see him?
No, I don't know him. No.
Oh, he's great on
Okay.
Instagram. He's probably no bigger than my mother is. He's like this
Okay.
tiny, brilliant investor.
Well, your
But
mother's small, but mighty.
Right. Oh, yeah. I say
She's a
little
formidable
person,
woman.
big mouth.
Yes.
So that's how he is. But he's always telling people on the street, like, you can invest. Instead of buying a new pair of Nikes, buy stock in Nike company. Because the minute you buy the shoes and you walk out of the store, the value's down. But if you have stock in the company, that you're always going to earn from that. So how does someone think in their 20s, I'm living, paycheck to paycheck? Is it as simple as not buying a couple of Starbucks coffees and putting that money away each weekend? And then
Right.
how do I invest in that? Where does someone begin in their 20s when they're just starting out and they really have no knowledge about
Okay.
any of this?
And you are reminding me of my college economics. They talk about
Okay.
the utility
Right.
of purchases. So
Right.
we can come back to that, because
Okay.
you shouldn't just
We have a lot we're coming back
you
to.
you shouldn't just invest and not enjoy life. You should
Oh, yeah, no.
You should make
not to
purchases
the detriment of you not having a life.
that bring
yeah.
you joy, give you
Right.
good experiences.
Oh,
yes.
of course. Yeah.
So
But maybe you don't need 30 pairs.
also true. So I'd mentioned before Fidelity. Fidelity is one of the largest financial firms that's out there, and they've been
Right.
around for a long time.
Reputable.
And they were one of the original money managers that kind of for the people, where they had mutual funds that you could just go into their offices and buy it, and then later on you could buy them online. There was a famous money manager that worked for Fidelity called Peter Lynch. I don't know if
Okay.
you've ever
Yeah,
heard of
sure,
Peter Lynch, but he managed their biggest fund called the Magellan Fund. It had a tremendous track record.
Right.
And one of his maxims was buy what you know.
Right.
And so you talked about, buying the shoes.
Yeah.
when I was a kid, around the time I was trying to get invited to your sister's bat mitzvah, I was my baseball was my first love, and I loved collecting baseball cards.
Right, sure.
And so I talked to my father about that. He said, well, if you think baseball cards are a good product and interesting and you have a passion for them, maybe you should look into buying stock in a company called Topps, which is the largest trading card company.
Sure.
So I did that in seventh grade, and then sold it about a year later. I actually used some of my own bar mitzvah money, at which your sister was at the head table, to be clear. And
the cute blonde. How could you not?
Yes, absolutely. And she was a great dancer.
Yes, she is.
Yes. She had a little bit of the Like a Prayer Madonna kind of moves to her. So,
and the gloves and everything too.
Yes, that was yes. We are children of the 80s.
You guys are.
Yeah. You are too. Yeah, okay. But, anyway, I made a good return, and that was a great experience.
Yeah.
And
you didn't know you were into finances then?
I did. It was more the affirmation of, I did some work here.
Right.
I got a return on my investment of time and money.
Right.
And that was a really good experience. And so what I would say to you is that as you start investing, there's certain guardrails you can put up in terms of asset allocation of stocks versus bonds.
Right.
But then there's also, do your research, buy what you know.
Yeah.
Or if you don't understand something because someone's working on your behalf, ask them about it.
Right.
Like I mentioned before about mutual funds and ETFs. At our firm, I mean, this is going to come as a shock to you, but none of us have PhDs in science.
Okay.
And so, what is the next miracle drug that could be out there? We don't know. We have no way of assessing that. Like, what's the next Ozempic, for example? And so we've invested in a biotech ETF with a lot of emerging smaller science companies.
Right.
And we have a small portion of the portfolio in that for our clients, because that's going to give us exposure through someone else's work to that kind of product. And so that is the opposite of buying what you know, but it's working through someone who knows what they're doing in that space.
Okay. So you're really saying, like, make sure you're diverse.
Make sure you're diverse.
Right.
If you're going to do something yourself, make sure you do your research.
Right.
And if you're not certain about it, ask
an expert.
Ask an expert, ask questions.
Call Bill.
Or whoever. And you just want to make sure that you understand everything that you own and you're getting paid commensurate to the risk you're taking.
Okay. So this is what you would advise any 20-something out there to do.
Yes.
Okay.
I would say before you come talk to someone like me, or certainly before you do anything on your own,
right,
do some work.
Right.
Do some real work.
And in doing that work, do you talk about budgeting? Do you talk about savings? Do you talk about, like, getting rid of debt? Like, what do they need to know?
Okay, let's talk about debt, because this may be one of the most important takeaways that I could offer up. A lot of students or young people come into the workforce saddled with debt.
Yeah.
And there's different kinds of debt, and not all debt is created equal. The worst kind of debt you can have is credit card debt. It's extraordinarily expensive. The APR, annual percentage rate, could run 18 to 20%. And none of that is tax deductible. Okay. And so that is really punitive debt. So the first thing I would say before you invest, because it's very hard to go out there and find 18 to 20% returns, pay down your credit card debt. Okay. Student debt, you have some leeway in that.
Different.
But like past a certain point, that is also not tax deductible, and that is also very expensive. And student debt is a real good investment, because that's maybe how you got through school. Maybe you got a higher degree to enable you to get the job that you had.
Necessary.
But that would be sort of in the hierarchy of bad debt to pay.
Yeah. It
would be credit card debt easily, and then perhaps student debt after that.
Okay.
And then there's mortgage debt. And so as a general matter, and this is going back to public policy for decades, the government wants you to own your home.
Yeah.
And so when you have a mortgage on your primary residence, is what they call it, up to a certain point, you can deduct the interest you're paying on your mortgage against your income. So it's lowering your income that you're getting taxed on by the government. And and that goes to another point. Taxes are real. Yeah. They're not going away. Right. They're probably only going higher. Right. You should always think about investments on an after-tax return. What is the money that is actually going to my pocket after I do all this work?
After you pay all this off.
That's right.
Got it.
That's right.
And even the mortgage may not even be applicable to a lot of 20-year-olds who are renting, who can't afford a home yet. And
that's right.
All that stuff. Okay.
That's right. And there's math you can do in terms of the rent versus buy.
Sure.
Versus the
Which
rent
is
versus
more
buy
cost
approach.
effective.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. So is there a certain percentage of each paycheck that people should be putting away?
It's a similar question to how much money should I have in the
Right,
bank?
right.
It's really what you're comfortable with.
Okay.
Um,
Because you don't want to miss out on life. Go to a concert, do something that you enjoy. You
That's
don't want
right.
to be like stuck in your home all the time, not having a life and enjoying
Right.
yourself. But
Right.
you also want to put away for the future.
Right. You don't want to live to work. You want
Right.
to work to live.
Right.
I would say, to answer your question in a different way, the rule of thumb that a lot of people have for how much money I should have saved is if I have to go 3 to 6 months without having any income, could I pay
you
my
do it?
necessities?
Got it.
And so that's probably a good rule of
That's
thumb.
a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which I newly out of college, I'm sure a lot of young kids just can't.
Right. And usually that first place that you're renting on your own, that's a real decision of what you can afford.
Yeah.
It's a real come down to go from, a nice college apartment that mom and dad may
that
be
your
paying
parents
for.
were supporting.
Yeah. To the 3-bedroom,
To the
1-bathroom
split.
place. Yeah, exactly. That they have to put the fake wall up in New York City.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Okay. So then why not just put money into a savings account
Okay. So I'm going to give you some math
as opposed to investing?
I'm going to give you some math here.
Okay, lay it on
got
me.
Okay. So I mentioned before this notion of opportunity cost.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I invest in one thing, I can't invest in another thing. That applies in finance, but it also applies in sort of how you're living your life. If I do one thing, I can't do another thing.
Right.
Okay. And so if I were just to put my money metaphorically under my mattress, that would just be cash. And the cash would get the value of that would get eroded by something called inflation. And there's also this notion in finance that $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. And the reason why is because if I have $1 today, I can invest that and it can grow. Whereas I have $1 tomorrow, that doesn't really do me much good in the moment. So if you look back at some history, because these numbers are very compelling.
Here comes the history teacher.
Here comes the history teacher. If you invested $100 in 1970 in the stock market through 2023, through 3 years ago, that $100 would be $22,500. So basically 220 times your money, or a 12% annualized return. Okay. That's amazing.
Fabulous.
That's the power of compounding. Okay.
So explain compounding. It's not just on the money, it's on the principle. So break that down for everybody.
So if I'm earning 12% a year, I invest $100 year one. In year two, that becomes, in year zero, at the end of year one, that's $112. And so now I'm going to get 12% on $112.
Right.
And I'm going to get 12% on whatever 112 times, like $125.
Right.
And so what compounding is basically interest upon interest.
Right.
And that's the notion of
interest and investment.
Yes.
Right.
Your investment and then
plus your interest.
And
then interest on top of all of that. Compounding each.
Yes. And leaving it in the market, in the example I just gave. Now, if you were to go to bonds, again, this is on risk return. If you were to invest $100 in bonds in 1970, that would have turned into about $8,000 by 2023. Not bad.
Right.
That's pretty good. That's what, 80 times on your money?
Right.
And it's about a little close, like a 9% annual return. Okay.
Okay.
If I just left it in cash in a money market fund in a savings account, that $100 would be about $1,000. So stocks, 220 times my money, bonds 80 times my money, cash 10 times my money over a period of 40 odd years.
Right.
So that is the power of compounding.
Start investing now, kids.
Exactly. And even if you do like the 60-40 or 70-30 in that, you're gonna start to build real wealth that way.
Okay.
Right. So
I think people are just scared because they don't understand it.
Okay.
And they don't understand the terminology.
Okay.
They don't know where to begin.
Okay.
So I hope that they listen to everything that you said and how you're breaking it down so they know that, I can manage this.
I hope so too.
Okay, good.
Because the stress, there's all kinds of stress in life. And there's real scary stress. And then there's money stress.
Yeah.
And that's not a fun way to live. So the sooner that you can start planning and have like a foundation of security,
right,
literally and figuratively, perhaps you have a house, then that's going to bring you a more fulfilling life.
Right. And I think they don't realize that it can be just $25 a week, $100 a month.
Right.
You know, like it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be suffering.
Right.
But just a little bit.
Early days, I think it's less, the amount is less important than the discipline of putting that money away and constantly investing
100%. I agree with that. The discipline of doing it. Okay. Got it. Okay. So once they have a job.
Yep.
and they have a little bit more security,
Yep.
steady income.
Yep.
What do you need to do for future financial growth?
Okay.
And savings.
And savings. One thing that I'll add in here that's a little bit off topic, but I think worth mentioning, is that early in life, and insurance has some bad connotations.
Yeah.
We do some insurance in our practice, but it's generally part of a larger estate planning exercise.
Mm-hmm.
When you're younger, you don't have a lot of savings.
Right.
If you have the wherewithal to buy, and you're younger, and you're generally healthy when you're
Right.
younger, I mean, you can still be crazy when you're younger, but you can be
Right,
healthy,
right,
right?
right.
Yeah, but you can be crazy in a charming way,
Right.
which is what we're striving for.
It's okay.
When you're younger, you can get insurance that's very cheap.
Are you
There's
talking life, health?
life
what kind of insurance?
Life insurance.
Okay.
Life insurance. And you can get term insurance, which lasts for usually about 20 years, and then it goes
Right.
away. And oftentimes, what happens is that you grow into a more secure position as you advance in your career,
Right.
and you accumulate more earnings, and you can let that insurance dissipate. But if God forbid something were to happen,
Yeah.
and you have a young family, that insurance is there in lieu of the assets you might otherwise accumulate.
Okay.
So
I think this is a brilliant point you're making.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So don't be dismissive of insurance given all of its negative connotations. It's something
Right.
to think about.
Okay.
So that was a little off topic, but I just want to make mention of
No,
it.
I think it's
plan.
brilliant because I
Okay.
didn't even have it in my questions or anything
Okay.
like that, and I thought it was brilliant. You're right.
It wasn't on the test?
No, it wasn't on the test. But you're a great educator, so I love it.
I appreciate it.
love
That's very
it.
kind. That's very kind.
Okay, so then can you tell? We already discussed sort of like compound interest,
Right.
but you said you want to go. I wanted to go back to it as well. Diversification.
Got it. Okay. So diversification can come in many forms. It can come in the different kinds of stocks that you own. We're buying a mutual funds and getting a lot of different stock exposure that way.
Right.
There's diversification between asset classes, between stocks and bonds.
Right.
We can talk a little bit about alternatives.
Yeah, I have that here too.
Yes.
I want to discuss that.
And so for some context, because alternatives gets a lot of...
Tell everyone what alternatives.
Okay, so alternatives
Wait,
are...
break it down even simpler. Tell everyone about diversification,
Okay.
and then we'll get into alternatives.
Okay, got it.
And then we'll
Okay.
say why they're all important.
Okay. Diversification is different kinds of stocks.
Right.
Okay. And so that could come in the form of large cap, mid cap, small cap. That could come in terms of different industries,
Right.
technology, healthcare,
Different countries.
different countries. Absolutely. So that's diversification within stocks.
Right.
And then take that same analogy and apply it to bonds.
Right.
And then you mix that all together, and then all of a sudden you have a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds.
Right.
Okay. So I kind of mentioned before, like 70-30 stocks and bonds as on average where a lot of people's asset allocation ends up.
Right.
Increasingly, a lot more planners are talking about 60-30-10. 60 in stocks, 30 in bonds, and 10 in alternatives. So what are alternatives?
Yeah.
Alternatives is basically a fancy way of saying anything that's not in the stock market, anything that's not really bonds.
And not cash.
And not cash. And so it's things like private equity. And private equity is basically another way of saying owning stock in a company that's private.
Right.
Or investing in a fund that buys private companies.
So how does someone get into that?
So generally, because those investments, like if I buy a stock, I can sell it tomorrow and get my money back.
Right.
If I invest in a private company, I don't know when I'm getting my money back.
Right.
If I invest in a fund that buys private companies, I don't know when I'm getting my money back.
Right.
And so that's why it's sort of 10%.
Only 10%. Yeah.
Because that's the riskiest, that should be the riskiest part of your portfolio.
Right.
And
Could be tremendous gain, could be tremendous loss.
generally in those types of investment, you're looking to make multiples on your money.
Right.
And you're looking to make that in a
But
period
there's
of
no guarantee.
There's never a guarantee.
Right.
You're looking to make that in sort of a 3 to 7 year time frame. But you have very little control over that investment, and it's completely illiquid until something happens.
Okay. So it isn't really at the end of 7 years because you may not see your money after that as well.
That is also true.
Okay.
And so when you
Because
invest,
you don't know when you'll be able to take it out or get it back.
that's right.
Okay.
That's right. If you're investing in a private company, especially if you're not a manager or owner, an owner with control
Right,
of it,
right. That's
or
different.
investing in a fund that does that, and like the big funds that invest in private equity, famous ones are like KKR,
Right.
Bain Capital, Thoma Bravo, names like that, and they invest around all sorts of different themes. Generally, you have to be of a certain net worth to invest in private equity or alternatives, and you also have to be prepared to hold that investment maybe for as long as 10 to 12 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
And so
different kind of level of wealth to do that.
That's right. And so alternatives gets a lot of airtime, But for most people, it doesn't make sense.
Not realistic, yeah.
And even for those people, it does make sense. You can spend more than 10% of your time worrying and thinking about that. But the reality is the bulk of the wealth is made in the bulk of your money should be in public and liquid assets,
right?
Especially when you're young,
right?
And that's where you can accumulate a lot of wealth in a more transparent way.
Got it. You're a little more control, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, so you talked about the percentages of the portfolio changing as someone ages.
Right.
Can you talk about what a Roth IRA is?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm going to give you an example too before we get into that about how the portfolio can change.
Yes.
So I have 2 daughters.
Yeah.
And Rachel, my older one, is now in college. She's a first year in North Carolina.
Congratulations.
Thank you. She's lovely. She's amazing. She's having a great time, and she's studying even more, and we're proud of her for that. And she wants to be a teacher, which is also cool.
Awesome.
But when she was born, I established something called a 529 plan.
Okay.
What a 529 plan is that you can start saving money as soon as your child is born, and that money is put into an account that then grows and can be used towards their education.
Right.
Whenever
like the Florida prepaid.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And the Florida prepaid is a wonderful program for those who live here, especially if you have any sort of possibility of going to a Florida.
There's reciprocity with other schools. You don't get the same return, but you do get something for each of the credits.
That's right.
But it's investing in the future.
Right. And so the reason why I bring this up on the basis of the question you were asking me about IRAs is that when Rachel was born, it was 100% stocks.
Right.
And what they had sort of, they called it like a time horizon fund.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the first, call it 5-6 years of her life, it was all in stocks. As, she's getting to be 7 or 8, it starts to have, stocks and bonds. As she's getting closer to college, 16, 17, about to go to college, it basically becomes very safe investments. Not quite cash, but maybe more like money market oriented.
Got it.
And so that's a good example of a life cycle of how you're investing around the needs. Because I wanted
of stocks compared to bonds.
The money that compounded on Rachel's behalf in the 529 from when she was born back in 2006 is now safe and can be used to pay for her tuition.
Amazing.
In 2025, 26 for her first year of school and thereafter. So 529 plans are a really good thing to look into for a young family. Okay. Now, with an IRA is a way to save. It's an individual retirement account. Mm-hmm. It's a way to save for retirement, separate and apart from whatever sort of company retirement plan you have access to.
Right.
Some people have old school pensions, or a 401k plan is what you've often heard of, and I want to come back to that too, because 401k plan is really important. Yes.
Okay. I'm making notes.
If you don't have a company retirement plan, or you want to supplement your company retirement plan, you can invest in an IRA.
Okay.
And you put money in to the IRA over the course of your career, at least like the early to medium part of your career, because there's income restrictions on what you can contribute.
Okay, I was going to ask you, how much do you put away and how often?
Got it. So you can put, I think that right now what is deductible on a regular traditional IRA, we'll talk about
outside of your work, outside you're supplementing,
of your work I want to say it's $8,000.
Okay.
Okay. And so you can put that away.
How often?
That's once a year.
Once a year.
Got it. So you can do that once a year. It is tax deductible, and then you don't get to withdraw that money until you reach retirement age, unless there's some sort of hardship.
Right.
Until 59 and a half.
Okay.
And then after you get into your 70s, they require you to spend that down.
You have to. Yeah.
And because that was tax deductible dollars on the way in, on the way out, in your retirement years, 59 and a half on. You pay your income tax at your age, and as you're using those IRA dollars in your retirement. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, a Roth IRA, and the reason why it's very popular is that you can, and there's income limits. I think you kind of top out like around 100. If you make more than 125,000, you're not eligible for a Roth IRA. You put the money in the Roth IRA. It's after tax dollars, and then you can also start to withdraw to 59 and a half in your retirement. But when that's withdrawn, because you've already paid taxes on those dollars, you're getting that money out tax-free.
Right. You don't have to pay.
Right. And so there's a lot of people who are our age, who have traditional IRAs, and they're now doing the calculation, should I do a Roth conversion? because based on the assumptions around my tax rate, this may be a better deal.
And what the tax rate will be then.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm on that cusp right now, but I'm just saying.
Right.
For someone who's 20 or 30 and thinking about what the taxes might be when they're
exactly right.
At the door of 60.
Right. Or like, say, for example, you live in New York and you're paying very high tax rate,
Sure.
but you may want to move to Florida, as some people have done.
Come on down.
It makes sense to wait until you're actually a Florida resident to do that conversion, because you're going to be taxed at a lower rate.
Different taxes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. So a Roth IRA is, if you could start with a Roth IRA right away, it's probably a good idea. Because I think, again, over time, you're going to have more dollars in there that your dollars will compound, and you get all of that compounding, as opposed to be taxing on it
afterwards.
later. Exactly.
Okay. So go back to a 401k plan.
If your company has a 401k plan, generally,
and tell our listeners what a 401k plan is.
So
Sorry. I just want context for anybody who's like, I don't know what they're talking about.
Okay, got it. Okay, so when we were working in coal mines, there were pensions, or working in probably a little more recent, or like working like an auto plant.
Right.
There were pensions where a company, and they were called defined benefit plans, or DB plans. Okay. And basically the company, Ford, GM, Chrysler, whoever it may be, they were putting money away in pensions accounts and investing that on behalf of their employees. And then when you retired from those companies, you got some sort of payout for that.
Right.
In some cases that worked out well. In other cases, it worked out terribly.
Right.
All three companies that I mentioned before had real issues, including bankruptcy during the financial crisis of 2008. So that's not great, because then those benefits
are gone.
They certainly were diminished. If not evaporate altogether.
Right.
And so, and pensions are very expensive, very complicated.
Sure.
So a few decades ago, there's this notion of defined contribution plans, and there's a part of the tax code, 401k. So that's where that comes from. And basically what it is that the employer will set up a plan for you, and you, since you're contributing those dollars, a portion of those dollars, you can direct how they're invested.
Right.
So that's where I can make my asset allocation, where I can choose stocks or bonds or mutual funds or something like that. But the reason why 401k is really important, I want to come back to, especially for younger people or earlier in their careers, is that generally 401k plans have company matches. Where, like, if I put in, for every dollar I put in up to a certain percentage, my company's going to put in $1 for me. That's almost like free money.
Doubling.
Right. Yeah. So if you have to choose between an IRA or a 401k, I would max the 401k before I did the IRA.
Right.
That is probably the most, we talked about saving before, that is probably the most accessible, efficient way to start saving for your future with a 401k. Now, the downside is you don't get to use that until you're retired. But at the same time, though, like, you're getting, you're using other people's money to leverage your wealth.
To grow.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So what should someone start planning? When should someone start planning for retirement?
I think as soon as you start your first job and have your first paycheck.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And the same rules apply. Make sure you have like 3 to 6 months of wealth stored in case anything comes up or anything like that.
That's right.
And the best way to store is to prepare for retirement is, like you said, 401k, Roth IRA, all the above.
Right. And you had listed some questions before about taking risks.
Right.
And if you have the wherewithal, there's parts of your portfolio that you can take more riskier.
Right.
I don't want to say bets because it's not a game, but like maybe more speculative investment. Like you have a friend who's starting a company, or like there's this amazing scientific innovation that's that you can get access to through venture capital. Some portion of your portfolio could be that.
What percentage of that could be that risk? I guess it depends on the person.
I think that if 10% is sort of illiquid, risky assets, some fraction of that.
Some fraction of that. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a slow and steady kind of girl.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's another
not
thing
a risky
too.
Girl.
Like, how much money do you want in the bank? How much should you be saving? Those are very personal decisions.
Right. Okay, great. Is there a common mistake that most people should avoid that they don't realize?
I mean, it's going to sound trite, but you don't know what you don't know.
Right. And
I think making any decisions without fully researching it,
or
consulting others. Again, like it goes back to the Peter Lynch maxim. You should know what you own.
Okay.
And you should be able to, and you should go and retest that. So at our firm, we manage a few $1 billion, and we've got a wonderful practice and wonderful clients. And every week we have a meeting and we go through every stock that we own and we ask, why do we own this? Does that thesis still hold?
Right.
If it's changed, should we sell it?
Right.
Or should we buy more?
Right.
And so you don't necessarily need to do that every week as a layperson, but that should be a regular exercise.
Right.
I remember sitting on the trading desk and people would just forget to look at their 401ks. And there are also some sad stories too. I knew people during the financial crisis working at Citigroup who had a lot of company stock. And so you're sort of doubling down. Not only is this company paying my paycheck, but I also have an outsized position of my retirement wealth tied up in the prospects of this company. And in the case of Citi, that wasn't a good thing.
Yeah, not a good thing at all.
Because they were like other banks bailed out.
Yeah. All right. So my takeaway is greater risk when you're younger.
You have, yes, because one of the most important variables you have in investing is time.
Okay.
The more time you have, the more time you have to
recoup any losses, take greater risks.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So we talked about percentages of 60-40 or maybe 60-30-10. And we talked about having emergency saving for 3 to 6 months. But at certain ages, should there be putting away more or less? And at different stages? I know you said in your 20s, you can kind of live with a little bit less, but in your 30s, when you're maybe having children and buying a home, and then when you retire, you have grandchildren to worry about.
Yeah, money is a finite source, and you have to prioritize what's important to you.
Okay.
And
so it's not really on ages; it's more. It's a personal.
It's a personal preference.
Okay.
So, as I was thinking about, for example, we bought a home around the time we had our second child, Gabrielle, who's in 10th grade, killing it. And there was the calculation around maxing out her 529 versus the kind of place we could afford when we were living in New York City.
Right.
And so what is the right balance of how large of a mortgage do I feel comfortable having versus making sure that Gabrielle has her college savings.
Right.
And so those are the trade-offs that you have.
Okay.
And so it really depends on what your priorities are.
Right.
And that's the other thing too, is as you're nearing retirement, the money that you have once you stop working has to last for the rest of your life. And then maybe for other things like to leave an inheritance,
children,
for charitable donations.
Yeah, charitable philanthropy, all of it.
All of that. And so, but you don't have to do that in a vacuum. There's all sorts of tools and people that can help you with this, with the scenarios and with the different assumptions of how you're going to live your life. Like we have very granular conversations with our clients. Like I want to take 2 nice trips with the whole family every year. And this is what I'm going to set aside for that. So if that's what you're going to set aside for, then we have to figure out where that capital is coming from to enable you to do that.
Right.
And in some cases, maybe you should only take 1 trip.
Right. Sounds good. All right. So what's the biggest takeaway that everybody should know about being financially savvy?
It's not magic. It's easily demystified.
I think you helped demystify it.
Thank you. That's very kind. I hope I lived up to the billing.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you. I think that there's a lot out there there are a lot of resources out there that can help you. But I think it's very important to consider the source. I think it's very important to talk to some trusted friends and professionals before you make any decisions you can't undo.
Right.
And again, you really want to know what you don't know.
Right.
But I think if you were asking what the biggest takeaway for, you can't put your head in the sand.
Right.
You can't just hope for the best.
Right. And then 20 years from now, wake up and not have what you need.
That's right. Okay. That's right. Because that is
ignorance.
Yes. You want to have utility in your purchases and you don't want to have regret in your life decisions.
Exactly. Perfect. Well said. Well said. Oh, thank you so much. This
was
amazing.
It was my pleasure.
I'm so honored to have you here.
I'm honored to be here.
All right.
Did I do okay my first podcast?
You were amazing.
Okay.
And
awesome.
I told you, you were articulate and dynamic, and I was so proud to have you on.
Well, thank you.
I do a little thing at the end of my podcast, though, called Quickie Questions. Are you game?
Sure.
Okay, good.
Okay.
How do you handle stress?
Exercise.
Okay. Oh, that's a good one. All right. Anything you haven't done yet that you want to?
What I'm most excited about is seeing my girls walk down the aisle.
Oh, I love that.
That's what I'm most excited about. Yeah.
No
Yeah.
pressure on your daughters, but I think that's beautiful. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good thing to look forward to.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Most important thing you've learned in life?
There's family first.
Yeah.
I have been blessed with wonderful parents, with amazing sisters, great friends and family. And now the time to work with my father is amazing. And with Michael, who's a brother from another mother.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I hop and skip every day to work, but it's pretty jaunty, though.
I love that. And your wife and daughters, I love that you're surrounded by women. I think it's terrific.
Yes, they are amazing, and I learn a lot from them. And I don't really love it when they challenge me, but I learn so much from my kids.
Yeah, but it helps you grow.
Absolutely.
It's fine.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you have a favorite movie or show?
Okay. I would say probably Shawshank Redemption is a favorite movie.
Wow, that's a good one.
That's a good one. Favorite show? It's got to be, so two different directions. The first one is The Americans, because that was one that I watched with my wife, and I joke around about
Carrie
being
Russell.
a child of the Cold War.
Right.
I thought it was very well done, and I
Yeah.
loved all that history.
Yeah. The last episode killed me.
Oh my gosh! And then the attention to detail in terms of the staging and the setting and the music, amazing,
Yeah, brilliant, yeah.
Amazing.
Good choice.
And then, but then I would also have to say too, Friday Night Lights. That was
Okay.
another one I watched with my wife, and I aspire to be Coach Taylor.
Okay,
That's
good.
the dad I want to be.
Oh, I love that.
That's the man I want to be.
I know you're an amazing dad. I
Thank
think
you.
that's fabulous.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being
It
here.
was my pleasure.
I am so excited to get this episode out. I cannot tell you how many people I speak to who say, I don't know what to do. I'm embarrassed to ask questions. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know when to start or where to go. And so I'm so thrilled that you broke this down for everybody and really made it so informative and so educational and so easy to digest. And yeah, everybody get out there and start saving.
I had a tall and pretty Sherpa for my first podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a mutual love fest here today.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
To our listeners, thank you so much. So grateful that you're here. Keep listening, keep learning, keep laughing, keep up with Beek on Being. Follow Beek on Being on Instagram for the latest. To share thoughts, ideas, suggestions, or nominate a guest, DM us. Want exclusive content, behind the scenes stories, and listener links? Subscribe. Listen to Beek on Being wherever you get your podcast. All episodes are automatically transcribed. A big shout out and a huge thank you to Stephen Chen, woo, at Penthouse Studios. Beek on Being was recorded at Penthouse Studios and is a proud member of the Penthouse Podcast Network. Yay! Look at you.
Was that good?
A dynamo. That was
thank you.
amazing.
Okay.
How did you feel?
I felt good.
Right?
I know I talk fast.